Well, hello, everybody. Roger Durling, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. I am so excited. One of my favorite directors, writer-directors of all time, Sophia Coppola, is here with us to chat about her new film, On the Rocks. And Rashida Jones is going to be joining us shortly, but let's start you and I, Sophia. One of my favorite movies is The Thin Man. And
Oh, wow.
I'm like obsessed with that movie. And then I started watching your film, and there was a Thin Man vibe.
I'm so
Um,
happy to hear that.
so were you inspired a little bit by the tone of the Thin Man?
Yes, I love The Thin Man, and I'm so glad to hear that from you. And I definitely I was thinking about that and how I wanted to do, yeah, I was thinking about The Thin Man and wanting to pay tribute to that series that I love and having, that was the inspiration to try to like go on a detective story, even though we have barely any detective, but then like having martinis and trying to solve a mystery.
Um, I mean, there's always been funny undertones in all of your films. They're laced with humor, but in this one, you actually go head on screwball. It was that, um, I mean, it is a departure. Was that something that you were looking for to stretch yourself in that with the screwball aspect?
Yeah, I feel like you always want to give yourself a challenge, and I always want to do something I've never done before. And I was thinking about, oh, I wanted to see, a kind of a sophisticated comedy, and I'm living in New York, and I thought about that that great heyday of screwball comedies with The Awful Truth and My Favorite Wife, and a lot of them are based on some idea of fidelity and trying to figure it out, and misunderstandings, and kind of classic. I was trying to make a romantic comedy, but then it's also really about a father-daughter story and how to put in, more serious things into the setting that was fun and in the spirit of those traditional screwball comedies. I was trying to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things I love about it is that there is this level of lunacy and things seem to be derailing, but there's always an observational tone and melancholy that seeps in. Was that something that that you were conscious of balancing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my usual, when I'm writing a original screenplay, which is more personal, I get into sort of a introspective, melancholy aspect, because it's that time alone when you're kind of looking inward. But I wanted it to be something that was fun and light, and how to balance that.
Hmm. And tell me, it's the first time I mean, shoot in New York City, and you actually set a movie in New York City. Can you tell us about wanting to make New York City as it becomes a central character in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I've been living in New York this past chunk of time with little kids, and so it's the world around me, and it's intimidating because you think like, how can you do a New York movie without being like a fake Woody Allen movie? Or there's so many classic New York movies, and how can I do that in my own way, um, and and kind of give the romantic idea of New York that I love, but also be true to my style. So it was challenging, but it was I feel so lucky that we got to film in New York, and that they let us film in these historical places like the Carlisle Hotel and Bevelman's and 21 and all these places. So I
Raoul's, yeah.
tried to capture the world around me, and that idea that you go out in the world and the sounds of construction. And it's so kind of overwhelming being in New York. And then she gets in Felix's car and get whisked away to this kind of uptown New York, and the difference between downtown and uptown. And so yeah, I hope we tried to convey what it feels like to be there. It was a little bit of a romanticism.
No, I like, and I actually want to ask you a few more questions about that because you definitely capture a New York City, but one that we have never seen in style wise. I like the deep blacks that you capture can you talk a little bit about working with Philippe Lesud and capturing a New York like we have not seen up until this point?
That's such a nice compliment because I felt, yeah, we felt the pressure of making a New York movie and how to kind of fit into the history of that without repeating what you've seen. And I love working with Filippo Sword, who's such a great artist. And we struggled with how are we going to film it in a way that we haven't seen a million times, and how can we make it feel like this story? And we kind of just felt it out as we went along, but I wanted it to feel romantic, but also rooted enough in reality, but a little heightened reality. Like her apartment's more beautiful than reality, and the way they dress is, and the way that we love watching old movies because everybody's dressed beautifully. So how to balance that kind of romanticism with also feeling real and natural enough that you can relate to them. So that kind of that mix.
And in the middle of it, you have actually a chase sequence. You have, I would have never thought that in a Sophia Coppola there was going to be a chase sequence. Can you tell us about shooting that and the idea of incorporating a car chase?
Yeah, I mean, I really tried to push myself to do things I haven't done, and that kind of more silly, broad comedy. He's like hiding behind bushes and all the stuff that's so I'm always more subtle, but so I had to push myself to try to kind of really do comedy like that. I wanted a full on car chase because she was whisked away on this adventure, and luckily my brother came in and helped me shoot the car chase sequence. I'm like, it's our action sequence, and he's like, it's hardly an action sequence, but to me it was. And we stayed up all night shooting that with Bill and another car. And luckily, Bill's a good driver, and she did a good sport, like because she was really in the car with Bill driving crazy, and she's a good sport. But it was fun, I think, to get to just sort of break, what you don't expect, and do things you haven't done, and break genres.
Yeah, but I mean,
It's fun.
I don't want to read too much into it, but I love the fact, and I wonder if that was when you were thinking about, that there is, this is careening out of control, the screwball, and then all of a sudden you add the car chase into it that just adds to that aspect of her journey. It was that
Yeah,
was
I was definitely thinking about those classic screwball comedies, and that she gets kind of dragged into this, or pulled into like a crazy adventure that she didn't know she was getting into, and how it escalates and finds herself in Mexico. And it was important to me that she was vulnerable enough in the beginning so that you would believe that she would go along with this. And he's one of those charismatic characters like Bill is, that brings kind of this magic wherever, like a fairy godfather showing up, and just when her life is feeling mundane, and kind of stirs it all up. And that, I think that's the fun of those kind of screwball comedies. So I was trying to do that.
and you succeeded.
Balance
The
tones.
I'm obsessed with the opening sequence, the
Yeah,
fact that it almost becomes like a fairy tale look, and then the spiral moment that is sort of like Cinderella running down the stairs, and she wakes up to reality.
Cheerios on the floor.
Yeah, in her apartment, picking up her children's toys. Can you tell us about that that that
Yeah,
sequence?
thank you. I wanted to tell the story really quickly of this idea we have about romance, and finding your partner, and this kind of romantic ideal, and then you know whatever, 8 years later, it's picking up Cheerios and shoes off the floor, like just that switch. So I had to tell that story really quickly, which we all know, but had to set that up and tell that story quickly with just a few images, and wanted it to be, this romantic ideal turning into the reality, and how you find yourself kind of switching gears into that. And the, I don't know, the shock of like having children, it's they're messy, it doesn't fit into the romantic ideal, it turns into something else, and kind of her finding her way through that.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much stuff when you think about it, about her journey, the fact that she's balancing, having young children, she's trying to keep her marriage alive, and exciting. And then at the same time, then she's also balancing her career. And then all of a sudden her dad walks into all of this. What was that, I mean, I don't want to pry too much, but is
Yeah.
that something that you were uh,
I was,
struggling with? I mean, that you were pondering about?
yeah, I was definitely thinking about that. I was struggling with having little kids and being a writer, and I used to stay up all night writing, and then you have to get up early with kids, and then you kind of find yourself in this new world where going to school, you are interacting with people that you've never, you don't have anything in common except for your kids are together. Like it's a whole new world, and there is a little bit of an identity crisis of like, who am I in all of this? And I think there's a lot of expectation to fill all these roles. I think that you hear a lot about these women who are have a career, and I'm a great cook, and I'm in shape, and I know, and I have this marriage, like all these different roles that you're expected to have. And I feel like there's a lot to kind of juggle and pressure, and how you kind of find yourself within all of that, and balance things. And I wanted her to, I was related to the idea you kind of can be lost for a moment in that transition, and then find your footing. And so I wanted her to be at that moment, which I was thinking about with having little kids and talking to friends who are artists and mothers, and and how to fit all those roles in. And so yeah, I wanted her to be vulnerable enough so that when he shows up, it's a fun escape from all of this responsibility, but then she's vulnerable to go to, he can feed into her vulnerability, and talk her into being a little paranoid, and go on this adventure.
And we'll get into, Bill Murray and the character and so, but I also love your exploration of this older generation, this characters in our lives that were objectifying women and the way they live, and then all of a sudden we love them, but we have to reconcile the generational gap between the two.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I was definitely thinking about like my dad and his friends, and the things that they would say to me, and talk about, how it shapes you as what their ideas of how women should be, and relationships, and then thinking about all these things you were raised with, and then wait, that's not how you're seeing things through this kind of man's point of view of that generation. And so kind of looking at that as an adult, and that kind of clash between the two, I thought um, it was so fun to see Rashida and Bill kind of head to head as opposites, and kind of an odd couple, talking about men and women and relationships. And so I was trying to, that's kind of at the heart of the story. It's really based around their conversations. That's what I wanted it to be.
and were you writing this for Bill all along, or it just happened that eventually you cast Bill in it?
Yeah, at the beginning, I didn't want to, because I felt like I can't work with Bill. There's too much expectation to live up to how much people loved him as the character.
Bob Harris.
Yeah, so I felt like, oh, we can never top that. And then I just thought, oh, enough time has passed. I have to just get over that. I love working with him. He's a national treasure, and how lucky if I could work with him once more in my life. And he's in a different stage where I've never seen him as a father, um and so I kind of got the courage up to ask him, and I was really glad that he showed up for me. And I knew that the character was, complicated, and it could be unlikable and flawed, and that he could bring the kind of magic and energy that he has, and make him lovable with all of his flaws.
And what do
And,
you think
and
is
balance
it?
and balance the humor, and also the sincere emotion.
No, I was just curious about you do bring the best out of each other.
Um,
I was wondering, do you know what that secret is? The fact that, I mean, it is, and it's so thrilling to think that he's your muse in a way,
I'm
It's
so, I'm so yeah, thrilled and honored to have such a great muse, and that he can express the what I have in my mind. And he's so unique, and he always brings something to it that is unexpected. But
and
I
this,
just
yeah, go
I don't
ahead,
know.
sir.
Well, yeah, I don't know what that is. I just feel like lucky that he trusts me, and and brings things that that I love watching.
Yeah, and was the second time around, was there, you used the word trust, was there more trust between the two of you this time around?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because the first time we worked together, we had just met, and he barely knew me, but I think he knew that I was sincere and was really trying to help me. So, so he was great. But this time we have, yeah, now we know each other and are friends, and so I think it was kind of easier for us to just kind of jump into it. And but he's always still a mystery to everyone, even to me. But but he did. Yeah, we do have more of a maybe a shorthand or an ease.
Yeah, I love moments that I just wonder if they were scripted and and that felt improvised, but then they're so truthful to Felix. Like, for example, when he brings the pink flowers and then the way he smells them,
Oh,
and that it is one. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
that's one of, I don't want to interrupt you. That's one of my favorite moments, the way he embraces the flowers.
Well,
But
that but what was that, something that you had in the script? But
that's a perfect example, because in the script I had him smell the flowers, because I thought he's the kind of guy that Felix, that who smells, takes time and stops and smells the flowers. So that's kind of the essence of his character. And so then I asked Bill, okay, he knew that was in the script, to smell the flowers, but then we filmed it and he came in and he put his arms around it and embraced the flowers and inhaled them. And it made me laugh, because only Bill would do that, like just totally embrace the flower. Like I would never have thought of that. So he definitely adds his special touch.
I mean, that's what I mean, is I was trying to articulate, but I couldn't do it well, is the fact that it feels like it's something that it was improvised, but is so organic to the character.
Yeah, he adds to it, because the idea was there, but then he adds a whole other layer. And I think that's what's so great about him. What was so fun to work with him is because he brings things that just add to it, and I wouldn't have thought of, but it's in the theme of the character, and he's so connected to the character.
And do you feel like, do you have to wrangle him, or do you just let him do his thing?
No, he does his thing, and then I give input, because sometimes I'll say, "Oh no, I don't think that's not so Felix," and like he's open to feedback, and tries things, but he's so smart. Usually, it's in line with the character and what we're thinking, but sometimes I'm there to guide it more how I saw it, or this or that. But it's usually just a fun surprise to see. He likes to you know make me laugh, like and come up with things. And with Rashida, he loved working with her. So the scene where he's talking about like them going to Mexico, and he says he's going to Manzanillo, and Rashida cracking up so much that he had fun with it. So yeah, he seems to have fun with embellishing the character.
You're a costume designer, and your work with her, I love the fact that character is so that you tailored, pun intended, the characters on the styling, like you clean up, um and you say so much about Felix, the way he dresses, and Rashida, she's wearing this hip hop t-shirts and Vans. There's kind of like this shabby chicness to her, and the contrast between the two visually with the costumes is that, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I love working with Stacey Batat. I think she's really great at contemporary costumes, because she can really help express the characters, and that's a part that I love working on, because it tells so much about the character. And it was fun to dress Bill up and have him in seersucker and all the scarves, and it was fun to dress him up. And then for Rashida to really transform her, so that in the beginning she's kind of in the t-shirt she slept in, and she's feeling drab and kind of beaten down with this role of motherhood. And then by the end she transforms, comes back to life, to her remembering herself, and he makes her have to dress up to go to her birthday, and you see that kind of I think all these elements help show the character and their emotional state and their evolution. So that's such a part of it. And Stacey's so good at I feel like elevating it so it's something that you want to look at or want to dress like a little more than reality, but still feels like you can relate to, I hope.
Which also Anne Russ, the production
And
designer, does as well, right? Because the apartment is that way too. It's just like it has like this high, low look to it.
yeah, I mean, to me, it's like a kind of fantasy. It's a little bit, it's nicer than anyone's apartment I see in New York, but hopefully it's believable enough that they could be there. And all the, I think it's so much the details that I hope make it feel real. And her Anne and her team are so good at making it look, appealing and beautiful, but also connected to who those characters are. And there was so much detail put into the art they have in their apartment and what's on the refrigerator and all these kind of little details that help so much.
Do you um storyboard everything? Do you like prepare everything in advance, or do you just
No, I sometimes make really crude sketches in my script when I have an idea of the shot, because a lot of times I'll see it as a big wide shot or close up, and just to show Philippe, really roughly. But usually, no, I with most scenes we have the actors rehearse and then look at it together and then figure out how to shoot it. So I try to leave space to see in the moment what it feels like and then how we're going to shoot it.
um Lost in Translation is a love letter to Tokyo, and it's I think I mentioned the last time I spoke to you that I had to take a trip to and
Oh,
stay at the Park Hyatt
yeah,
in
so fun.
Tokyo. And what you do with New York City is it's a love letter to New York, and that martini pilgrimage that you do all through, Club 21, you go to Carlisle, etc. What was it like shooting in those places?
Yeah, I was so glad that they really let us shoot in 21 and the Bemelman's bar, because they're just such historical establishments. They bring so much to it, you can't kind of create that. And I wanted to have authenticity and have that history. And we really shot at the table where Bogart proposed to
To
Bacall at that
Bacall.
table in 21, supposedly. And just to have that history and kind of incorporate that, and which is kind of Felix's world, and he's kind of the end of that era that's still connected to kind of this gentleman lifestyle, and yeah, just that he's connected to that, which is kind of fading and holding on to that.
And I mentioned to you before we came live that it makes you want to drink a martini. Your film, were they actually drinking martinis during all that?
I don't think they were any real martinis because we were shooting long days and but I wanted to, that was kind of like the starting point of the whole thing, is them over martinis talking about relationships and men and women and their different points of view. And I think I think my favorite shot in the movie is her tear dropping in the martini,
Oh my
and
goodness,
the city
yes.
see it, because and just that kind of indulging and heartbreak and enjoying all of that.
Yeah, there's quite a few moments that just get so just not melancholic is the wrong, observational, like that. There's a very touching moment of them in front of the water lilies painting.
Oh
And
yeah, thank you.
is that a real Matisse?
Oh no, it was no, the art department made they made a copy, but through the Monet
The
Foundation.
Monet, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
Matisse.
no, no,
I
no.
would,
I was thinking that, yeah, and they did a really good reproduction for the set, but yeah, I wanted to have these kind of quiet, touching moments in between the kind of the silliness, that there were some real heartfelt connections, and kind of that balance between the quiet moments and the other.
now Now, I mentioned that you have the deep blacks and burst of red colors in New York City, but when we get to Mexico, the color palette changes. It becomes tropical colors and fluorescent colors. You know, can you tell us about that visual journey?
Yeah, I wanted to have a really big contrast from New York City to this Mexico adventure, and Philippe really, shot all the green palm trees and just a totally different world. I was thinking of Blake Edwards and like 10, where like they go on these like adventures that are tropical and totally out of their normal life and has a kind of glamour to it, but really just that she's gone somewhere so far out from her regular life, and to look so different and bright, and she did these bright colors, and just the contrast, and then she goes back to her kind of reality in the city, but she has brought some life back to it, and by the end she's come back to her.
You also do something really interesting that by the time we get to Mexico, the screwball aspect is getting faster and out of control. But then at the same time, emotionally, there's that confrontation between the father and the daughter. Can you tell us about, calibrating and balancing that
Yeah,
aspect?
it's true that the screwball in this escalates where they're hiding in the bushes and like it's so silly. But then there's that scene where it's the most, I think, emotionally heartfelt when the two of them are when they're talking, and he's telling her about a relationship that passed away, and he kind of is revealing himself. That scene I thought was so, I was surprised when we shot it how emotional it was, and then in the edit I was like, how do we switch from this very serious kind of sad tender moment to like being super silly hiding in bushes, and so that was something in the edit that we had to find the tone and how to switch it, and yeah, I'm happy if it works, because I was worried about, yeah, you have these extremes and how to make that work, and having just like a little kind of moment to catch your breath after that, them walking, I hope would kind of connect that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the editing, Sarah Flack.
Yeah,
Tell us about working with her. She does really good work.
she's so great. I love working with Sarah, and this movie, when I wrote it, I thought, oh, it's pretty simple, like some people talking in New York, but then it was really hard to edit, and she really helped me find our way, because we had these really long dialogue scenes, and having to kind of, I didn't want to cut them down on the page, and so we were like trying to find the essence of them and how long you could kind of sustain that, and just finding the tone of going from humor to more emotional stuff. And yeah, Sarah's great to work with. She's very, and I feel lucky to have collaborators that you have, you're on the same page, and she has
Correct.
great taste, and we share this kind of same sense of humor, and so she can help me find the balance.
Do you find that you find the film in editing, that you hone it more during the editing?
Yeah, definitely. You it takes shape and you find it. And I knew that I wanted it to be, I hoped we could have it be comic, but then also touching, and that you have to find, it's so much about timing and balance and finding the tempo, which really happens in the edit. And Sarah's such a huge help. And she's also has a really great talent for music and rhythm, and working with the music. And yeah, I love working with her. She's great.
You mentioned just now about dialogue, lots of dialogue. You in the past have not had such a heavy script that has so much dialogue. Can you tell us about why did you choose this time around to be so dialogue heavy? It's not a bad thing. I thought it was terrific. I love the pitter patter and the rhythm of the writing, but it is, am I wrong that it's,
Thank you.
there was more dialogue this time, right?
Yes, definitely. That was something that was like a new challenge, because I've always just thought of films as telling the story visually, and I have never had much dialogue. And then as I was having lunch with Buck Henry and asked him about writing, and he said, "Why don't you write some dialogue for one?" He challenged me when I was talking about this idea that I had, I was trying to figure out. And that him challenging me really inspired me to like, I'm going to try to write dialogue, something I've never done. And this, I had so much fun writing pages and pages of dialogue between Felix and Laura, and really just trying to do something new. And the whole story, to do something dialogue driven, I've never, thought to do. And the story really centers around these three conversations that they have. And then I just had to fill in the scenes in between it, because really the core of it is their exchange and the evolution of their relationship. And it's signified in these three big conversations. But they were like, I don't know, 8-page scenes of dialogue. And I was like, how do we do that? So it was new for me. And luckily the actors were dedicated. And it was interesting how to make that cinematic and not just feel like, oh, you have two people sitting at a table talking like a play more.
No, I was really drawn into that aspect because there was an intimacy to it, and there's a connection between the two of them in those scenes that you talk about where it's heavy dialogue, and then you're surrounded with the madcap. Oh my goodness! And there's Rashida.
Hi.
My
Hi.
goodness, better late than never.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We, COVID times, there's emergencies pop up, but I'm so sorry. I tried to make it first.
Oh, I hope everything's okay. No, we've been having fun talking, so
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there was like I wanted to nerd out with Sophia, and we did about all this.
I'm glad I didn't interrupt that nerdiness.
Yeah, we're talking about banter, so perfect. But
you're talking about what?
Like banter and all the dialogue scenes, but doing so much dialogue.
Yeah, I was pointed out that I'm a big fan of Sophia, and that in the past her scripts have not been so dialogue heavy, and that in this scene, I mean, this script has a lot of dialogue. What was that like for you, Rashida, to have the long scenes? You have 3 long scenes with Bill that are dialogue heavy.
We were talking about like the Thin Man and stuff, and we talked about wanting to have that spirit of those kind of 40s banter movies, but be relatable and not of another era.
Yeah, and it is so challenging, because I think it's like the updating banter is probably the hardest thing to do. But what's so nice about working with this script was that, well, first of all, Felix's theories are so outrageous and fun. and so it gives me so much to play off of in terms of like my reaction to it. It's almost easy to have a reaction to something that is a strong point of view. So as an actress, it's like that makes it so much easier to play.
Which actually leads me to, you talked about the outrageousness, but I love the fact that you balance, you're rolling your eyes, but at the same time, we understand that you find kind of this fun about what he's doing. Can you tell us about balancing those two extremes within the same?
Yeah, well, I think also having a dad that you love and is from a different generation is not a foreign thing to me, and I think to a lot of people. And loving somebody who doesn't necessarily think exactly like you, I think it's something that's kind of missing in our cultural dialogue a little bit. And that's also something I loved about this movie, is like, just because we don't have the same philosophy doesn't mean I don't love my dad in the film. Like I can love him and roll my eyes in the same conversation. And that's what sort of makes, for a great relationship with somebody of a different generation.
Mm-hmm. And you basically play a straight man to Bill Murray. Tell us about that experience.
Well, that is the best thing ever. I mean, if you're gonna play a straight man, he's the one you want to play with. I think it's like, it's weird because I have played the straight person before in roles, and there is an art to it, because you don't want to be boring, and you don't want to be naggy, and you don't want to be the person who's like making sure that things aren't fun. Like you have to kind of keep the ball in the air a little bit, and and so I think to me that was a balance of finding him amusing and also feeling like getting a little bit tired of his point of view, but also playing with him, and and I think in a way, it's not like he was so outrageous, and he's not like an arch cartoon character. He was very much grounded in a in a in an honest performance. So it makes it even easier to be a straight man to that.
Now, Sophia, you wrote the role with Rashida in mind, right?
Yeah, we had done this Christmas special with Bill, and they
Right,
had a
yeah,
scene
yeah. A
together.
very Merry Christmas.
Yeah. But it always stayed in my mind, the scene of the two of them together, because they had such a sweet chemistry, and I know they both, admire each other's work. And so I felt like, man, I needed someone that could hold their own with Bill and not let him just take over. And I knew that, Rashida's strong enough to, to hold her own and to be the counter person. And also she has to convey so much just with a look, and is able to, what she's thinking by just her reaction to him, because some of the things he says, there's just nothing you can say back. So yeah, I thought it would be fun to watch him, and the film really relies on their interaction of just the two of them. So I knew that was a tall order, and that she was up
So,
for the task.
so what was it like, Rashida, when you get a phone call from Sophia Coppola saying, I've written a part with you in mind?
I mean, I don't want to embarrass her because
No, do it, please,
but
do
I
it.
I mean it is truly like a career, high, all-time high, dream come true. Like, you just don't ever think when you're in your 20s and you're, like pounding the pavement trying to get jobs, like taking the jobs you can get, that you would ever get, a call from somebody that you admire so deeply, saying that, there's this thing that they've thought of you for. I mean, it makes me feel like whatever I've done before in my career was worth it. Whatever, however hard it was worth it, because that just feels like a real vote of confidence.
Mhm. And you tell us about what was it? Was it difficult to calibrate Laura and getting to be inside her shoes?
Well, I think there's a lot, I have in common with her. I'm not a character actor, so I always have to find something that's like me. But it wasn't hard to do with this because, she's at a certain place in her career and a certain place in her relationship and with her family, where she's kind of trying to figure out, where her self-worth comes from, and what kind of how she interacts with her life, in a way that um, feels fulfilling, and maybe has some insecurity around that, and it obviously all comes out in this in this very misguided caper. But I do relate to this idea that, like, you have this great life, and I'm so grateful for my life, but as I approach the back half of my life, where do I find my joy and my contentment, my fulfillment? And am I just like, am I operating in an active way in my life with the people in my life, or am I sort of letting my relationships and things define me in a way where I'm not really, I don't have agency? So that part of it felt very, very real to me.
Mhm. And I asked Sophia this question from a cinematic point of view, that as the movie, by the time we get to Mexico, it starts getting more screwball, more physical, hiding in the bushes. But at the same time, it starts getting more emotionally. You have that big confrontation with Bill, and the stakes are higher emotionally. From an actor's point of view, what was that like, playing the very physical comedy, but while at the same time, grounding it emotionally?
Well, that's also what I loved about the script, and what I love about Sophia is she's able to create these worlds where both things are possible. And, that's really hard to do, but it's also, to me, looks and feels more like real life. When you can have like a moment that's kind of screwy and crazy and funny, and then you have like a real tender, honest, deep, emotional moment. Like, that is my favorite kind of storytelling. But yeah, I mean, I think it's about, like, I just kind of trusted Sophia to to make sure that like, you know, she gets the take where we're not being so overtly screwball, so it feels like it's fitting into the same movie. But I love physical comedy, and Bill's so good at it that it would have been a waste to not have him, climb over walls and, hide in bushes, because he's so great.
Fun to watch.
Yeah.
Actually, to both of you, but I mean, I'll start with Rashida. Was there one particular moment that Bill just completely threw you a curveball that you were laughing too much, or you couldn't keep a straight face?
Yeah, I mean, definitely several times, but there was one time that I think all of us were kind of having a hard time getting through the scene, because he himself was laughing so hard at his performance. But he was wearing this turtleneck and this blazer, and we're in his office, and he's just found out, the bombshell information that
Oh, yes.
is going to Mexico.
Yeah.
But just the way he was like really savoring the word Manzanillo, and he kind of like
Yes.
turned into camera to like deliver that line to me. And it was like, it was like heightened drama, where Felix was just feeling so, he's feeling so satisfied with himself for finding this piece of information. And Bill was like making himself laugh. And that was making me laugh really hard, because he's very professional most of the time.
I had to leave because I was laughing too loudly.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to mention the scene where he starts showing the photographs about,
Yeah,
like,
that's
look,
that scene,
I
yeah.
have, and I'm like, what's wrong with the photos? It's just like, but
it's a good reminder that anytime you show black and white, like telephoto lens photos of anything, it looks
incriminating.
Yeah, like even if you're eating a sandwich at your desk.
Sophia, what about you? Is there something that he did that totally threw you off?
Yeah, no, I think that scene especially, just the delight he's having in being like a spy and getting carried away, that always cracked me up. And then just little details when they're leaving the party at the Shrey Netherland, and he decided they should sneak out backwards. Those are like little things that these guys added that just was just fun when you're shooting. There's always little surprises that you don't expect.
And Chet Baker, I love your usage of Chet Baker. It goes perfect with martinis and capers. Can you tell us about choosing the Chet Baker jazz music?
Yeah, when I was writing the script, I was trying to be in Felix's mode, so I was listening to Chet Baker, and I'm so glad that we got the permission and could afford one of his songs in Bummelman's Bar, because I think that is one of my favorite moments of her tear in the martini, and then just seeing the skyline, and it makes me, it gets me emotional about like New York and this kind of romantic moment. But yeah, I think and then in the beginning, wanting it to be kind of this overly romantic idea of all the expectations you have for a marriage and romance, and to contrast the picking up Cheerios on the floor. So
And Rashida, earlier, oh no, go ahead, you were going to say
just
something.
the romantic
Yeah.
mood with Chet Baker.
Rashida, I was talking earlier about the costumes, and then Sophia's design sense that your character, the way that Sophia envisioned it with the costume designers, you're wearing Vans shoes, and then you're wearing like a t-shirt. Was that helpful, her design sense, Sophia's?
And Stacy.
Yeah, I loved it. That to me, like, being able to talk about and how a character dresses and how it reflects their mood is so fun. And then also Sophia has such great taste and such a clear aesthetic, that like having that and seeing her vision for this character, where it's like, this kind of like high low, it's like a person who is, has style but might be a little sad. Like a
t-shirt that slept in or off the floor.
Yeah, melancholy chic,
Melancholy chic. I called it shabby chic earlier, but I like melancholy. No, I like it melancholy chic better.
Yeah, I love that, because it's so specific. And there was like cool, like I had these great t-shirts from like you know, music from like when Sophia and I, like when we were younger and, you know, felt cooler, like, you know, Run
The
DMC,
other time.
Boys, the other version of us, like kind of leftover, plus, you know, like mommy stuff, plus like a gorgeous bag that maybe her, you know, her family member got her, like a Chanel bag. Like I love the specificity of putting all those things together.
Mm-hmm. The chase sequence from your end, Sophia and I talked about shooting a chase sequence in New York City, but you know, tell us about being a passenger to
Yeah.
Bill driving through New York City.
There's a couple times, a couple things that actually made it into the movie that like I was truly not acting. I was truly horrified. Because that car, it's very like whippy and it's very loud. And listen, Bill is a great driver, and I think he prides himself on being a great driver. But there was a couple turns where it's just like I wasn't sure if I was going to fly out of the side of the car. So you know, I think it added some reality to the situation. But I'm not like a thrill seeker, so that for me was not like an, you know, it was actually scary for me.
Yeah, but I mean the thrill
Right.
seeking aspect of Laura, I love it because he bring you know it he brings that in her. You know,
Yeah.
she's enjoying the sort of freedom all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
you have to
adventure
shake
by
her up.
proxy. Yeah, she obviously needs that in her life, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, ladies, I have kept you for a while here. What a terrific movie. I was telling Sophia Rashida earlier that I was so bummed out and when I saw it back in October and it gave me a big smile, brought me a big smile.
Oh, good.
Plus it made me want to have a martini. I wish I was having a martini while I was watching the film.
Yeah,
That'd
well,
be a
you
great
can
one.
now.
Yeah.
What did you say, Rashida? I'm sorry.
You can now.
No, of course,
Actually.
right after this, I'm going to. I'm going to. Thank you, ladies, so much. What a terrific film. Written, directed by Sophia Coppola and starring Rashida Jones. Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Enjoy your
much.
Thank
martini
you.
tonight.
I
Yeah, enjoy your
will.
martini. Think
Thank
about
Thank
it.
you. I will. Absolutely. Thank you.
Good
Okay.
night.
Bye.
Thank
All right.